Welcome to Almost Alone. Tonight's episode is called The Late Shift, and it features two stories from people who learned that being alone at work doesn't always mean being safe. The first comes from a man who took a job as an overnight security guard. He thought the hardest part would be staying awake. He was wrong. The second is from a woman who worked the graveyard shift at a gas station miles from anywhere. She thought the isolation was the danger. It wasn't. Both of them discovered the same thing. The places we go every day, the buildings we trust, the routines we follow, can become something else entirely when no one's watching. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. If you've been listening for a while, I appreciate you. Either way, if these stories resonate with you, consider subscribing. It helps more people find the channel. These stories are told calmly, but they're not light. They're real, and they linger. Let's begin. I'm 29 now. This happened when I was 24, fresh out of a failed attempt at college and desperate for something stable. I'd bounced between retail jobs for over a year, stocking shelves at a hardware store, working the register at a grocery chain, unloading trucks at a warehouse that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. None of it stuck. None of it paid enough to matter. When I saw a posting for overnight security at a corporate office building, I thought it sounded easy. Sit at a desk, walk around a few times, watch cameras, get paid more than minimum wage for the first time in my life. The building was called Hayward Plaza. 8 floors of insurance companies, accounting firms, and a handful of small businesses I never quite figured out. The kind of place that buzzes with activity during the day. Phones ringing, elevators dinging, people in suits walking fast like they're always late for something important. By 7 in the evening, it started to empty. By 10, when my shift started, it was a tomb. My job was straightforward. Man the front desk in the lobby, do hourly rounds, start at the top floor, work my way down, check every stairwell, test every door, log anything unusual in a binder that no one ever read. The building had cameras, but the system was ancient. Half the monitors showed static. The ones that worked displayed grainy black and white footage of empty hallways and parking garage corners. The system recorded to a server somewhere, but no one ever checked it. The footage was supposed to be archived for 30 days, then written over. As far as I knew, no one had reviewed a single frame in years. I was the only guard on duty from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. There was a supervisor named Dale who was technically on call, but he lived 45 minutes away in the suburbs and made it abundantly clear during my training that he didn't want to hear from me unless the building was actively on fire. "You're getting paid to stay awake," he told me. "That's the whole job. Don't make it complicated." For the first 2 weeks, he was right. The job was exactly what I expected. Boring, quiet, uneventful. The hardest part was keeping my eyes open at 3 in the morning when the silence pressed in and the fluorescent lights hummed at a frequency designed to put you to sleep. I brought books. I brought my laptop to watch movies with the volume low. I drank more coffee than any human being should consume. Then I started noticing things. It was small at first. So small I almost didn't register it. During my 1 a.m. round on a Tuesday night, I found a conference room door unlocked on the 6th floor. Room 614. Not unusual on its own. The cleaning crew came through between 8 and 10, and they sometimes forgot to lock up behind them. But when I pushed the door open to check the room, something felt off. The chair at the head of the table was pulled out, not tucked in like all the others. Pulled out at an angle, like someone had just been sitting there and stood up in a hurry. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at that chair. The room was dark except for the glow of the city lights through the window. Everything else was in place. Papers stacked neatly, whiteboard wiped clean, blinds half drawn. Just that one chair, out of position. I told myself the cleaning crew had moved it, or someone working late had forgotten to push it back in before they left. I locked the door, noted it in the log, and moved on. A few nights later, I noticed something else. A bathroom stall on the fourth floor that was usually propped open was now closed. Then an elevator waiting on the third floor when I hadn't called it there. Then a trash can in a hallway on 7 that had been moved about 2 feet from where it normally sat, like someone had bumped it while walking past. None of it was definitive. None of it was proof of anything. It could all be explained: cleaning crew, late working employees, my own memory, playing tricks after too many hours alone in the dark. But the feeling started to build, a low hum of unease that I couldn't shake. Something was different. Something was off. The building felt less empty than it should have. I started paying more attention during my rounds, listening harder, looking into shadows I used to walk past without a second thought. I found myself pausing at corners, waiting a beat before turning, like I expected to see something there. I never did. The hallways were always empty. The offices were always dark, but the feeling didn't go away. The night everything changed, I was at the front desk around midnight, killing time by scrubbing through old camera footage. You could rewind the feed about an hour if you knew which buttons to press, or dig into the archived footage if you had the patience. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I was just bored, trying to stay awake, watching myself walk through hallways I'd already forgotten walking through. I found the recording from my 11 o'clock round, watched myself enter the frame on the fourth floor, walk down the long corridor past the accounting firm's offices, turn the corner, and disappear from view. The hallway sat empty for about 30 seconds. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. Then a figure stepped out of an office behind where I'd just walked. I sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. The figure stood in the hallway for a moment, facing the direction I'd gone, not moving, just standing there. Then, after maybe 5 seconds, it stepped back into the office and pulled the door closed. My stomach dropped. My hands felt cold. I'd walked right past that door. I remembered walking past it. Room 412. A small office that belonged to a CPA who kept his blinds drawn and his door locked. I'd tested the handle like I always did. It was locked. I moved on. Someone had been inside, waiting, listening to my footsteps, waiting until I passed to step out and watch me go. I went back to the fourth floor that same night. My heart was pounding as the elevator doors opened. I walked down the corridor, footsteps echoing too loud in the silence, and stopped at room 412. I tried the handle, locked. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the door, trying to convince myself I'd imagined what I saw. A glitch in the footage, a shadow that looked like a person, my tired brain making something out of nothing. But I knew what I saw. I went back to the desk and tried to keep watching the cameras, but I couldn't focus. Every shadow looked wrong. Every flicker of movement on the monitors made my pulse spike. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the footage in my head. The way the figure had stepped out so smoothly, so calmly, like it had done this before, like it knew exactly how long it had before I might look back. I reported it to Dale the next day, left him a voicemail because he didn't pick up his phone, sent him an email with a timestamp and a description of what I'd seen. His response came 3 hours later. 2 sentences. Probably just a tenant who lost track of time. Building secure. No follow-up, no questions, no offer to check the footage himself or send another guard to help cover my shifts. I was on my own. Over the next week, I started reviewing camera footage obsessively. Every night before my rounds, I'd scrub through the previous hour's feed on every floor, looking for anything out of place, any movement I might have missed. I saw the figure twice more, once on the 6th floor, standing at the end of a hallway near the stairwell, visible for maybe 3 seconds before stepping through the door and disappearing. Once on the 2nd floor, moving through a corridor just after I'd walked through it, I could see myself in the distance at the far end of the frame, completely unaware that someone was behind me. They never showed their face, never stepped into clear view of the camera. They knew exactly where the blind spots were, exactly how to move through the building without being seen head-on. That's when I understood. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't someone who'd lost track of time or wandered into the wrong building. Whoever this was knew my route, knew my timing, was staying one step behind me intentionally. The building didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. It felt like I was being hunted in slow motion, and I was the only one who knew it. I decided to test it. The next night, I changed my pattern completely. Instead of starting at the top floor and working my way down, I started at the basement and worked up. I varied the timing. Left 5 minutes early on some rounds, 10 minutes late on others. I wanted to see if the figure would adjust. The first night, nothing happened. The building was quiet. I almost convinced myself I'd scared them off. The second night, I was on the third floor around 1:30 in the morning when I heard a stairwell door close somewhere above me. The sound echoed down the concrete shaft, a heavy, metallic thunk that I felt in my chest. I froze, listened. Footsteps, descending, slow, deliberate, each one measured and careful, like someone who didn't want to make too much noise. Then they stopped. I stood at the bottom of the stairwell, looking up into the dim, fluorescent light. "Hello? Security?" My voice echoed back at me, then silence. I didn't go up. I finished my round fast, practically jogging through the hallways, and went back to the front desk. I locked myself in the security office, a small room behind the main lobby with a reinforced door and a frosted glass window, and sat there until my shift ended. I reviewed the cameras the next morning. Nothing. Whoever it was knew exactly where to stand, exactly which angles to avoid. I told Dale again, begged him to send another guard, to call the police, to do something. He finally agreed to come in for one overnight shift to see for himself. The night he was supposed to show up, he called at 11. His car had broken down on the highway. He couldn't make it. "You'll be fine," he said. Just one more night. I was alone again. I was always alone. Around 2 in the morning, I was on the 5th floor doing my round. I was moving faster now, not lingering in any one place too long. I turned a corner near the east stairwell and saw a door standing open at the end of the hall. Not unlocked. Open. The corner office at the very end, the one with the big windows that overlooked the parking lot. I approached slowly. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness ahead of me, bouncing off walls and door frames. When I reached the office, I stopped in the doorway and looked inside. The desk chair was turned to face the door, like someone had been sitting there, watching the hallway, and had only just stood up. On the desk, illuminated by my flashlight, was a printed copy of my patrol schedule, the one I kept in a binder in the security office downstairs, the one that listed every floor, every route, every timing. My name was highlighted in yellow marker. I didn't finish the round. I ran. Back to the elevator, down to the lobby, into the security office. I locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and called 911. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, I heard footsteps in the lobby. Slow, measured, no urgency. Just a steady rhythm, like someone out for a casual walk. I watched through the frosted glass of the security office door as a shape passed by. It stopped directly in front of the door, turned, faced me. I couldn't make out features, just a silhouette distorted by the textured glass. A head, shoulders, the vague outline of a hand. It just stood there. I didn't move, didn't speak, barely breathed. The dispatcher was saying something in my ear, but I couldn't process the words. The shape stayed for what felt like an eternity. Then it turned and walked away, toward the back stairwell. Police arrived 12 minutes later. 4 officers swept the building floor by floor while I sat in the back of a patrol car, shaking. They found the stairwell exit propped open from the inside with a wedge of folded cardboard. Whoever it was had left before they arrived, gone into the night like smoke. But they found where he'd been living, a storage room on the 7th floor, a room I'd checked 100 times, never once noticing that the space behind the old filing cabinets wasn't as deep as it should have been. Someone had cleared out a gap back there, just big enough for a sleeping bag, a pillow, a few gallons of water, and a stash of food that could last weeks. He'd been living in the building, maybe for months. In that space, tucked into a corner like souvenirs, they found something else. A pen from my desk. The nice one with the rubber grip that I'd thought I'd lost weeks earlier. Old patrol schedules I'd thrown away, pulled from the trash, smooth flat, arranged in chronological order, and a photograph, grainy, clearly taken from a phone aimed at one of the security monitors. A photo of me sitting at the front desk, staring at a screen, completely unaware that I was being watched. The police told me what it meant in simple terms. He'd been in the security office, probably during my rounds, while I was walking the floors he'd just vacated. He'd sat at my desk, looked through my things, watched me on the monitors from the same chair I sat in every night. He knew everything, my schedule, my habits, my face, and I never knew he existed until he wanted me to. They never identified him. No fingerprints in the system, no DNA matches. Building management finally took it seriously, reviewed weeks of archived footage, found over a dozen instances of the same figure appearing in the building after hours, always avoiding direct camera angles, always timing his movements around my rounds. The case went cold. It's still cold. I quit the next morning. Never went back to Hayward Plaza. Never worked security again. But I think about it sometimes. All those nights I walked those halls, thinking I was the only one there. All those hours I sat at that desk, staring at monitors, never once suspecting that someone had been sitting in that same chair hours earlier, watching me through the same screens. I thought I was keeping the building safe. I wasn't even the one in control. He was. I'm 31 now. This happened when I was 22, the year after I graduated college, with a degree in communications and $40,000 in debt. I'd spent 6 months applying for entry-level jobs that required 3 years of experience and getting rejected from internships that wanted me to work for free. By September, I was desperate. I would have taken anything. What I found was a gas station. It sat off a rural highway about 15 miles outside a small town called Ridgecrest. Population 4,000 on a good day. The station was called Miller's, though no one named Miller had owned it in decades. It was one of those places that existed purely because the highway existed, a necessary stop for truckers and travelers passing through to somewhere else. The building was small and square, with a flat roof and faded signage that buzzed when the lights were on. 2 rows of pumps out front, a diesel island for the trucks, and a parking lot that could hold maybe 20 cars if you squeezed them in. Behind the station, a narrow strip of cracked asphalt led to where employees parked, hidden from view of the road. Beyond that, nothing. Just a tree line that started about 50 yards back and stretched into darkness that seemed to go on forever. I worked the overnight shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week, alone the entire time. My manager was a man named Doug, who smelled like cigarettes and seemed perpetually annoyed that the station existed at all. During my training, which lasted about 2 hours, he showed me how to run the register, stock the coolers, and mop the floors. He pointed to a red button mounted under the counter and said, "That's the panic button. It's supposed to call the cops. Probably works. Never had to use it." That was the extent of my safety briefing. The job itself was simple. Ring up customers, keep the coffee fresh, clean the bathrooms every few hours, restock cigarettes and energy drinks when the shelves got low, stay awake. Most nights were dead. Between 11 and 2, I might see a handful of customers, locals grabbing a six-pack, teenagers buying snacks after a late movie. After 2, the truckers started rolling through. They'd fill up on diesel, grab coffee and a sandwich, maybe use the restroom. They were usually polite, usually tired, usually gone in under 10 minutes. Between customers, I had nothing but time. The store was quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the drone of the coolers cycling on and off. I read books behind the counter, listened to podcasts with one earbud in, watched the empty parking lot through the big front windows, and waited for the sun to come up. I had a small back room where I was allowed to take breaks. It wasn't much. A mini fridge that barely kept things cold, a microwave with a broken turntable, a folding chair that squeaked when you shifted your weight. The room had one small window near the ceiling, frosted glass, maybe 8 inches tall, the kind that was never meant to open, just enough to let in a sliver of daylight during morning shifts. Other than that, it was just a vent that connected to the main HVAC system and a door with a lock that I used every single time I went in there. The cameras in the store were display only. 4 monitors behind the counter showing live feeds of the pumps, the aisles, and the parking lot. Nothing recorded. If something happened and you weren't watching at that exact moment, it was gone. Cell service was a joke. 1 bar on a clear night if you stood near the front windows. Nothing when it rained or when the weather turned. The landline behind the counter was my only reliable connection to the outside world. I told myself the isolation was the hardest part of the job. The loneliness, the empty hours, the feeling of being the only person awake for miles in any direction. I was wrong. The first time I noticed him was about 2 weeks into the job. It was a Tuesday night, a little after 1 in the morning. I was behind the counter, half reading a paperback, when headlights swept across the parking lot. A pickup truck pulled in, older model, dark blue or black, hard to tell under the sodium lights. It didn't stop at the pumps, just pulled into a spot at the far edge of the lot, near the road, and sat there. Engine off, lights off, just sitting. I watched from behind the register, waiting for the driver to get out and come inside. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The truck didn't move. I couldn't see through the windshield clearly. The angle was wrong, and the lot wasn't well lit out there, but I could tell someone was inside. I could see the vague shape of a figure in the driver's seat, motionless. After about 15 minutes, the truck started up and pulled away. No wave, no acknowledgement. Just gone. I told myself it was nothing. Someone checking their phone. A tired driver taking a rest before getting back on the highway. It happens. People do strange things at 1 in the morning. But he came back. Same truck. Same spot. Same time. Somewhere between midnight and 2. 3 nights in a row, then 4. He'd pull in, park at the edge of the lot facing the building, and just sit there. Sometimes for 10 minutes. Sometimes for half an hour. Then he'd leave. He never got out. Never came inside. Never bought anything. Just watched. I mentioned it to Doug during a shift change. He barely looked up from his phone. Probably just some guy who likes the quiet. Lot of weirdos out here. Don't worry about it. But I worried about it. I started watching the lot more carefully, keeping track of when he came, how long he stayed. I wrote it down in a little notebook I kept behind the counter, like documenting it would somehow make it less unsettling. The 4th week, something changed. He pulled in at his usual time, around 1:15, and parked in his usual spot. I watched from behind the register, pretending to read my book, stealing glances at the truck every few seconds. After about 20 minutes, the driver's door opened. A man got out. Average height, average build, wearing jeans and a dark jacket with the collar turned up. I couldn't make out his face clearly. He was too far away, and the light was wrong. But I could tell he was looking at the store, looking at the windows, looking, I was certain, at me. He didn't walk toward the entrance. He walked around the side of the building, toward the external bathroom entrance that customers could access without coming through the store. I lost sight of him as he rounded the corner. 10 minutes passed. I pretended to be busy behind the counter, straightening cigarette packs and rearranging displays, but my eyes kept flicking to the monitors. The camera covering that side of the building was angled wrong. It showed mostly wall and a sliver of the bathroom door. I couldn't see if he'd gone in or if he was still standing out there. 15 minutes. 20. I walked to the front door and locked it from the inside. Flipped the sign to closed. Even though we were supposed to be open 24 hours, I didn't care. Doug could fire me. At least I'd be alive to get fired. Eventually, maybe 25 minutes after he'd walked around the corner, I saw him reappear on the monitor. He walked back to his truck, got in, and drove away. I made myself wait another 10 minutes before I unlocked the door. Then I grabbed the biggest flashlight we had and walked around to check the bathroom. The door was closed. I pushed it open slowly, flashlight raised like a weapon, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Empty. Nobody there. But the window, a small frosted glass rectangle high up on the wall, was open a crack. It was the kind of window that was supposed to be stuck shut. Painted over years ago, I'd never seen it open before. I closed it, locked the bathroom door from the outside, went back to the counter. I didn't mention it to Doug. I knew what he'd say. After that night, the visits changed. He started coming inside. Always late, 1 or 2 in the morning when the store was empty. He'd push through the front door, set off the little chime, and browse the aisles for a few minutes like he was deciding what he wanted. Then he'd bring something to the counter, small things, a pack of gum, a bottle of water, a single candy bar. He always paid cash. Exact change, counted out slowly, like he wanted the transaction to last as long as possible. He didn't say much at first, just thanks or have a good night, in a voice that was flat and quiet. But his eyes moved constantly, around the store, toward the back room, toward the monitors behind me, toward me. Then he started asking questions. You work here by yourself every night? What time does the morning shift get here? Is that your car parked out back? The silver one. I gave vague answers. Told him we had multiple people on shift. Told him I wasn't sure about the schedule. Told him the car wasn't mine. He smiled when I lied. A small, knowing smile that made my skin crawl. You're smart to be careful, he said once, dropping coins onto the counter one by one. Girl like you, out here alone. Never know who might come through. I stopped responding after that. Just rang him up, gave him his change, watched him walk out, locked the door behind him and didn't unlock it until his truck was gone. One morning after my shift, I walked out to my car parked behind the building. The sun was coming up, painting everything orange and pink. I was tired and thinking about nothing except getting home and going to sleep. I noticed the dirt near my driver's side door was disturbed. Footprints. Fresh ones by the look of them. The edges still sharp, not yet softened by wind or time. The prints led from the back of the lot, circled my car completely, and went back the way they came. Whoever made them had walked around my vehicle, looking in the windows, checking the doors, taking their time. I hadn't heard a thing during my shift. That night, I parked at the far end of the lot, under the one security light that still worked. A week later, I found a note under my windshield wiper. No words, just a drawing. A crude sketch of the gas station, done in pencil. The building, the pumps, the parking lot. And in the back where the employee parking was, an X. And inside the building, another X, right where the break room was located. I called the police. 2 officers drove out, looked at the drawing, took my statement. They said they'd increase patrols in the area. They told me to call if I saw him again. But there's not much we can do about a drawing, one of them said. No threats, no crime, just keep your eyes open. I asked Doug for a schedule change. Different shifts, different days, anything. He said there was no one else to cover overnights. The last night started like any other. The lot was empty by 2:30. The truckers had come and gone, leaving nothing behind but tire marks and the smell of diesel. I was in the back room, door locked, eating a granola bar and trying to read a book I'd lost interest in 50 pages ago. The only sound was the hum of the vent above me, that constant, low drone that I'd learned to tune out weeks ago. Then I heard the front door chime. Someone had entered the store. I set down my book and checked the monitor mounted on the wall of the break room, a small screen that showed the same feeds as the ones up front. The store looked empty. No one in the aisles, no one at the counter. I thought maybe I'd imagined it, or maybe someone had pushed the door open and left without coming in. It happens sometimes. Kids messing around, wind catching the door wrong. I waited, listened. Footsteps, not in the store, closer. Outside the break room door. Soft, deliberate. The sound of someone trying not to be heard. Then the door handle moved. Slowly, carefully. Someone testing it from the other side. It was locked. The handle stopped moving. I pressed myself against the far wall, as far from the door as I could get. My hand found my phone. No signal, of course. Nothing but a useless rectangle of glass and metal. Silence. Long, stretching silence. Then a voice. Low. Calm. Right through the door. I know you're in there. I stopped breathing. I've been watching you for a while now. You're always here, every night. Same time, same routine. Pause. You shouldn't have moved your car. That was rude. I like knowing where to find it. Another pause. I could hear him breathing on the other side of the door, slow and steady. We'll talk soon. Footsteps, moving away. Then nothing. I stayed in that room for over an hour, pressed against the wall, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I listened for every sound. The coolers, the HVAC, the occasional car passing on the highway. Waiting for him to come back. Waiting for the handle to turn again. Around 4 a.m, I heard the rumble of a diesel engine pulling into the lot. A trucker, probably. I made myself get up, unlock the door, walk out into the store. A man in a plaid shirt was standing at the coffee station, filling a large cup. He looked up when I came out. "You okay?" he said. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I asked him to stay. Told him I needed to call the police. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and leaned against the counter while I picked up the landline. The officers arrived within 20 minutes. They searched the lot, the perimeter, the area behind the building. They found footprints near the back room window, a pry mark on the frame where someone had tried to force it open. Then one of them asked about the external bathroom, the one customers could access from outside. He said there was a maintenance access panel in the back wall. I didn't know what he was talking about. He showed me. Behind the bathroom, hidden by a panel that looked like part of the wall, was a crawl space, a narrow gap between the bathroom and the back room where I took all my breaks. It ran the length of both rooms, maybe 3 feet wide, barely tall enough to sit up in. Inside, the officers found a blanket, a pillow, empty water bottles, food wrappers, the same brands I sold in the store. Someone had been living in there, and in the wall that separated the crawl space from my break room, at eye level if you were lying down, was a hole, small, clean, perfectly round, drilled through the drywall with something precise, a peephole. I thought about all those nights I'd sat in that room, reading, eating, resting my eyes, leaning back in that squeaky folding chair, staring at the ceiling, thinking I was alone, thinking I was safe because the door was locked. He'd been on the other side of the wall, inches away, close enough to hear me turn pages, close enough to hear me breathe, watching. They identified him a few days later from my description and the truck registration. His name doesn't matter. What matters is that he had a record. Prior arrests in 2 counties, stalking, trespassing, peeping. Nothing violent on paper. Nothing that had put him away for more than a few months. Not yet. He was picked up 2 weeks later in another county, another gas station, another woman working the overnight shift alone. That time, he didn't just watch. I don't know the details. I didn't want to know. A detective called to tell me they'd arrested him, that my case was part of a larger investigation, that I might need to testify. I said I would, whatever it took. I quit the morning after the police found the crawl space, left my key on the counter, and walked out without saying goodbye to Doug. Never pumped gas again. Never worked a night shift again. But I think about that crawl space, how long he'd been using it, how many nights he'd lain there in the dark while I sat on the other side of a thin wall, completely unaware. I thought the isolation was the danger, the empty highway, the miles of nothing between me and the nearest help. But the danger was never outside. It was never in the parking lot or the tree line or the dark stretch of road that led to nowhere. It was inside the walls, waiting, watching, counting down the nights until I was alone enough for whatever came next. That's the end of tonight's episode. 2 people, 2 jobs. Both of them thought they understood the risks, the boredom, the isolation, the long hours alone in empty buildings. Neither of them realized someone was using that solitude against them, learning their patterns, getting closer, waiting. The security guard thought he was watching the building. The clerk thought she was safe behind a locked door. They were both wrong. The places we trust, the buildings we enter every day, the rooms where we let our guard down, can become something else entirely when the wrong person is paying attention. And the scariest part isn't the danger itself. It's how long it can go unnoticed. If tonight's episode resonated with you, I'd appreciate it if you'd take a moment to like the video or leave a comment. If you have your own story you'd like to share, you can submit it through the link in the description. And if you haven't already, subscribe. There's more to come. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.